Hi, I'm Deb, and this is Dave, and this is our first
Vlog.
pod blog video cast thing.
A vlog is an old-fashioned thing, isn't it?
That's what our daughter says, that we're not doing a vlog, because that would be like a journal, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. We don't know what it is, but if you're anything like me, you're not actually watching this. You're probably just hit the button and are listening to it.
If that.
Yeah, hopefully. But I kind of thought this would be easier than than writing, because I am writing a whole lot right now. And wanted to shift gears a little bit for National Recovery Month and recognize that is happening right now, and have Dave come and talk and maybe make this a regular thing because he's so charming.
As you can tell.
Anyway, we are talking about this week, the health aspect of recovery, and specifically talking about addiction and how a substance addiction affects your brain. And we're not going to go into neurobiology or anything like that.
Not that we couldn't.
Because we're brilliant. But not the actual, like, chemicals in your brain research kind of things. If you want to read more about that, I just read 2 books. One is Beautiful Boy by David Sheff, and he really digs deep into neurobiology and how chemicals, and especially he was doing research about journalistic research, research journalism. Anyway, he was a journalist, or probably still is. Anyway, interviewing people about what meth does to your brain. And then I just finished The Big Fix, where her name's Tracy, and I can't remember her last name, but anyway, she was talking about heroin, how heroin affects your brain, again, with research. And I thought I'd have my expert Dave come on and talk about opioids, as in prescription pills.
Right.
Because that is his experience, is with 15 years being addicted to painkillers. Yeah. So
I'm not an expert,
no,
like a doctor.
No.
But I do know my experience.
He just plays one on TV.
That's really old.
Sorry.
That's an old commercial from like 1984.
I think so. The closer I get to the camera. No, I don't know.
It's great. You're doing good.
Okay, thanks. Okay. So you just jump in here anytime, because
we're talking about the physical, physical aspects of addiction, right? And recovery.
Right. And primarily to people maybe who are not so familiar with it, or maybe think, as happens often, people want to know why this whole recovery thing is such a big deal. And doesn't it end when you stop taking pills? Right. So talk about that.
Okay, well, there's a lot of things to talk about. First of all, you don't put chemicals in your body for a long period of time without it affecting your body, affecting your brain, affecting your chemistry, your body chemistry, your brain chemistry. A lot of effects while I was on pills. I couldn't sleep super well, so I'd either be, take so many that it would make me fall asleep, or I'd be wide awake. And so that alone, that little piece, makes you feel odd. But then also the lack of sleep, So there's a lot of things. Sometimes I'd be super hungry. Sometimes I would not eat for a long time. And so there's all sorts of things that are kind of secondary physical attributes. But certainly the biggest part was withdrawal. Like, you think, I had a professor in college who used to talk about doing things that weren't healthy, or doing things that were sin or things. And he said, here's the big secret, that whatever you're doing that you shouldn't do, stop that. And we'd all kind of laugh. And first of all, that was not my experience. I knew taking pills was wrong, and lying about it, and overusing and abusing and using them not as they were intended. Because the other physical part is, any substance you're taking does make you feel better. It does make you feel good. There's a pleasurable side of it, at least at the beginning. After years of it, though, it wasn't even that I got high or it made me feel better. A lot of times it was purely just so I wouldn't experience withdrawal. And so withdrawal is that your body is craving it. It's used to having that chemical. And when you pull that away, your body rebels. And so for me, it felt like the worst flu you ever had. I would go from sweating, remember that? I would just be like sweating and then freezing cold, throwing up, other flu symptoms, irritability. I felt like every nerve ending was just electric, almost like it was like my skin was, when you have a fever and your skin gets really sensitive. Emotionally all over the map, really angry and really sad and morose and a lot of weird stuff. But almost to the point, though, and I'd get twitchy. That was always the biggest one. I would get shaky. I would literally get the shakes and could not hold still. In rehab, when I finally went to rehab, they called me the earthquake for the first several days because I would just be just jittery and shaky, and your body is doing everything it can to try and let you know it wants something that it's not having. So there's this huge physical side of it that when you stop taking it, your body's demanding that thing back. And for what I was taking specifically as well, a lot of times because if you're taking pills, it's pharmaceutical, pure drugs. And it's not something you go to sleep and, put an ice pack on for 3 days. It was weeks and weeks of intense, acute withdrawal. And in fact, even when I was in rehab, they had to have me taper off. But
that's right. That they had to put you actually back on tramadol and then slowly wean you off of it because they were afraid that it was going to be just too much for you.
Yeah, like dangerous.
A question for you about, I can't remember if you said that you were taking the pills because of migraines. And if you've been reading the blog for very long, you know that that's why Dave was taking pain pills, was for migraines. And it was long-term treatment for migraines. And then the long-term treatment went from using to using more to then using it when you didn't really need to use it, to abusing it, to dependence, to addiction. So that's kind of the journey. But where in there was it hard at first to differentiate? We've talked about this before, between were you having a migraine or were you having withdrawal, and the idea of rebound headaches.
I'm not sure I even now can tell you. I'm sure they were all interconnected. So one of, ironically, one of the symptoms of withdrawal was migraine. And so, so there would be rebound headaches. There would be dehydration. There'd be tension. Obviously, there's massive amount of stress. Your blood pressure goes up. It drops. So there's a lot of physical stuff that not is just uncomfortable, but like sometimes life-threatening. Like you can actually die from that. Also just your body, imagine being as sick as you've ever been in your life, and you know exactly what's going to make you feel better. And not just not be sick, but like instantly bliss. And so, not just feeling horrible, but knowing I know how to solve this pain, and got to have the willingness and ability to somehow the strength, which obviously I didn't have for years and years without a higher power to help me. So there's a physical, that first few weeks, and man, how long did that last? I mean, that was weeks.
Well, when you were in rehab the first time, it was 3 weeks that you were in. And then, and it was a while after you came out that you still seemed like you were really weak physically, but then you went back.
Then I started using again and I relapsed.
But then when you stopped taking back in 2007, that was like November of 2007. You were sick. You were sick into even starting your job in January, probably for at least the first 6 weeks of that job. And then I know...
And less, but still enough that it was... Like I would wake up, I would notice it. I would have to get up from my desk and walk around the office or, or just to kind of shake it off, because if I sat too long still, I began to feel almost like an anxiety attack, pressure, nerves, jittery.
And that was 6 weeks after his last pill because
Yeah.
you didn't start that job
So it's
at
January.
least 6 weeks.
Right.
It might even have been almost 2 full months. That he still felt that way.
And
From
fortunately,
it.
yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just remembered when I was in rehab, way before that, they talked about withdrawal. And one of the things they told me is it could be because of what I was taking, it could be months. And at first you're like, well, that's not going to, that's not going to be me. But the thing that got me through when I actually got healthy was remembering this could go on. I just need to, get through it. Now I will say about 6 weeks, once I started my job and about 6-7 weeks into it, like it was better. It was, it was like half as bad as it was when I first started. And by then it was like, do I want to go back and go through that first chunk again? It's like, no, I can handle this today. And there's no way I want to go back and experience that. So if I really want to be clean, I can finish, another 3 months of this I could deal with as long as I don't have to go back and experience that acute withdrawal that I was experiencing.
Now, I know this is hard to remember, but do you think that was the longest that you had gone in 15 years?
Oh, yeah.
Without
absolutely
medication?
More than a month? Yeah. So I think the longest I had gone previous to that was maybe a month.
Not amazing. And as people have asked me this before, a couple things I want to mention here. This is this whole thing that we're talking about is the difference, or one of the differences between like opioid addiction. This is what opioids do to your brain. So it's prescription drugs like Oxycontin, like I can't, I'm not going to list them all right now, but
all that stuff.
And then those are the legal ones, and then heroin for the illegal. The fentanyl is in that category, but fentanyl is legal and illegal. So legally, meaning it's
they're
a
all
prescription
illegal.
med.
They're all, even the legal ones are illegal if you don't get it right.
Right. Okay, but heroin's not like
you don't get a prescription for heroin.
No, you don't. But this is the problem with opioids as far as like why there isn't that you can just stop. Because it does things to the receptors in your brain, which that goes into neurobiology. We're not going to go there. You can look all that up. You can Google it.
I'll say this too, and everyone's different.
Yes.
Like I'll talk to people who are like, yeah, I just went cold turkey and I was fine in 3 days or a week. And,
from what?
well, from
Sorry.
No, but I mean,
Sorry.
people will say that. Now again, everyone's story is different,
Right.
So maybe they weren't using as much or as long. So I guess my point is, some of us go through withdrawal worse than others. But that is not a way. You should never use that to judge whether somebody's legit going through withdrawal.
Right. And this is something that we need to clarify too, because and what makes long-term prescription opioid addiction as dangerous as heroin is because the longer you take the pills, the more tolerance you build up to the pills, and the more you take. And the length of time that you're on it, it's like this mathematical thing. Was that a good graph?
Nope.
That the longer you take it and the more you take of it, the more it just is in your system, and it's harder to get it out of your system. Yeah. And so that's part of what made Dave's withdrawal from it. And we're talking 15 years of continuous use of pills. Most of that time, you're having some sort of prescription.
Right.
And then, so that goes into the whole pain management, which we won't go into right now. But then, the other thing was, and that we don't know for sure how this affected, but he also was taking Suboxone, in that last bit. And we have heard from a number of people that getting off of Suboxone, which is the pill that's supposed to help you wean off another drug, can be really very, very difficult.
Well, that was my point. So again, that's something that depending on the person and what you took before and what you were taking may not be a good tool. But for me, the thing you need to remember, even if you're a perfect candidate for it, and is that you still are going to have to withdraw. It's never like this smooth, like you're going to have that when you finally stop taking, whether it's that, maybe it's not as bad taking Suboxone or something, but eventually you're going to have to stop taking an opiate, and that's going to that's going to suck. That's going to be bad, and it's not going to be great. Mm-hmm. And it may be less, and maybe it's safer. So for me, yeah, it was another step down, and it was really just as hard getting off that, off Suboxone. So there was the withdrawal, and the detox chunk of it. That's the detox. So I had this acute withdrawal for several weeks for a couple of months, and then I had then post-acute withdrawal.
Oh!
And there's our son home from school.
Our son is home from school.
We're doing anyway. So sorry, back to the thing. So there was with acute withdrawal, and then there was post-acute withdrawal, which a lot of stuff. So within like 3 months after, I had this one day I went to work and came home, and all of a sudden I was like, oh my word. And this was a pretty cool day where like I went through a whole day. It didn't experience. I had no jitters, no sweats. I didn't crave the pills. Didn't even think about it. And that was this like amazing day. And it's, it was this crazy day, this day of victory. And of course, then 2 days later, I was shocked. All of a sudden I woke up and I had jitters again, and I had some sweats. And they call that PAWS, post-acute withdrawal symptoms. And they told me again in rehab, and I'm so glad I remembered it. And thank you guys at rehab that told me this. They're like, it could happen a couple of years down the road that all of a sudden out of the blue, you'll be cruising along all of a sudden. And then one day you'll wake up and like, what is going on? And I'll experience that. I mean, I haven't experienced it in a long time, but for probably 2 or 3 years afterwards, out of the blue, I would have these like withdrawal symptoms. And that just shows how powerful it is. There's some other lingering things. Do you want to talk about that? Do you want me to talk about some of those like other physical things?
Sure.
Like I gained like 30 pounds.
You probably don't want to know that.
But yeah, because I craved sugar. My body craved sugar. And being an addictive person and an addictive personality, I couldn't eat just one Twinkie. I had to eat them all. And my memory, I honestly think I'm not quite as bright as I used to be. I used to be really smart. Now I'm just really smart. I'm not average. Wow.
Just above average.
That's really hurtful.
Oh,
that's not really hurtful. But I used to be, there are these gaps in memory. I kind of have some Swiss cheese brain sometimes. And then I didn't notice this till just recently when Deb pointed out when I preach, and I think you probably have noticed this here, sometimes I'll skip words. Like I will actually be talking and think, and I guess my brain will there are synapses that just won't fire, and I will say words that miss. I did that on purpose for a little comedy. But yeah, so there's some like lingering long-term effects that go on. But the cool thing is I don't experience withdrawal today, which the lie I told myself and the reason I kept using often was going through that acute withdrawal, like, well, this is the way your life is going to be forever. You just need to experience this. You're never going to feel pleasure again. You're never going to feel happy. You're just going to always feel this miserable, I've got to slog through the next 15 minutes of life feeling in my body hating me. And it's so cool to go, you know what? It's not going to be like that. It's not going to be as fast as I want, but eventually I got over it, and it's pretty cool.
And that is, you are almost 11 years clean.
Yeah.
Almost 11.
November, it'll be 11 years.
November, yeah. Okay. So next time, next week, hopefully on Friday, we will talk about home next. The 2018 themes for National Recovery Month. It is join the Voices for Recovery, invest in health, home, purpose, and community. And so next week, we are going to talk about home.
Awesome.
All right. Thank you. Thanks for watching, and see you next week.